Well, good evening, everybody. Tonight we are focusing on our introduction to electric vehicles, and this is presented by the Hackettstown Free Public Library from September 18th, 2023. So this is really just a basic overview tonight. It's nothing too technical, so if you don't know that much about cars, it's fine. So we're going to break it down real simple. What are electric vehicles? They are cars, SUVs, trucks, or vans that run on electric batteries and not solely on gasoline. Hybrid electric vehicles have been around for about 25 years, and you're probably fairly familiar with these. But mainstream electric vehicles have only really become more common recently, and that's because of Tesla and its competitors. So we're going to go basically into the different types of electric vehicles. As I mentioned earlier, there's the traditional hybrid or HEV. Those rely basically on gas, but switch to battery power for short bursts. You've seen them like a Prius or things like that. They typically get about 45 miles per gallon for a sedan, and SUVs get about 35 miles per gallon. Actually, the first ever hybrid vehicle was back in 1899 and was called the System Lohner Porsche Mixta. Don't quote me on the pronunciation on that. But in 1997, the Toyota Prius was first introduced in Japan, and that was the real first hybrid electric vehicle recently. In 1999, Honda Insight was introduced as the first mass-produced one in the United States. And the current models of hybrids are the Prius, the Toyota Elantra hybrid, the Ford Escape hybrid, and many more. They're typically regular cars that are gas cars, but they just kind of have a hybrid version. So a lot of these will have the same names as your typical gas cars. Also, what's known as a plug-in hybrid or PHEV. Those also have both gas and electric power, but they usually go only about 50 miles on the battery only. After that, they will use gas. So, you charge it the same way you would a regular electric vehicle, fully electric vehicle, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the battery is not that big because it uses still mostly gas. They're not as popular as regular hybrid vehicles, but they're becoming more of a market share. The question is, will they die out as sort of a half measure between hybrids and fully electric vehicles? So some of the ones that exist right now are the Hyundai Santa Fe plug-in electric. There's a Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. There's a Kia Niro plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So you've definitely seen them on the road. They have both a gas tank and a plug. We're really going to talk about tonight are the electric vehicles, the battery electric or electric. So that's a BEV or EV. They run completely on battery electric power. They need to be charged by a cable. So there is no gas involved whatsoever. The most popular models have a range around 250 to 300 miles, and they're becoming more and more popular. Dozens of models are available for most car companies. In 2022, 2.5 million were sold in the US. And most car companies expect to be predominantly electric vehicle by 2030 or so. Current models right now are the Tesla Model Y, the Kia EV6, the Volkswagen ID4, etc. There's also fuel cell electric vehicles, which is a bit of a different thing. These are fueled by hydrogen gas. So the science here is that hydrogen reacts with oxygen in the fuel cell, and that generates electricity. So that's like, something that's really interesting, but is not that common. They're very well. They're the least popular type, and they're basically all in California because that's where the infrastructure to charge exists. There's only about 15,000 on the road as of last year. It's pretty cool though. They have hydrogen filling stations. The only waste product is water and heat because it's hydrogen. Um, and the current ones, the current fuel cell models are the Honda Clarity FCEV, the Hyundai Nexo, and the Toyota Mirai. As I said, you really will not come into contact with these because they are basically all in California. So let's focus mainly on electric vehicles or battery electric vehicles, as they're also known. What's it like to drive one? What's it like to own one? Where do you get one? How much should you expect to pay for one? And what are the pros and cons of them? So let's go into it. What's it like to drive an EV? They are fun and fast. EVs have instant acceleration and fewer moving parts than a traditional internal combustion car engine. So they have a smooth, quiet ride. They have peak torque from a standstill, and they have great handling due to the position of the battery because it's fairly heavy, low, so there's not really a rollover risk for the vehicle. Also, you recharge while you drive. So almost all models come with a regenerative braking system, which means that when the car is going downhill or when you brake, it recharges the battery a little bit every time. So it's kind of interesting to drive. Um, with most models feature paddle shifters to increase or decrease the rate of regeneration, and you'll feel a little bit of resistance the higher the level of regeneration that you get. So it's sort of like if you've ever used a exercise bicycle and you can increase the resistance, it's sort of like that, except you're generating energy when you do it. There's something called one pedal driving, which EVs you can use. The regenerative braking system, as I said, adds friction to the wheels. So the car can be slowed down or stopped by basically letting off the accelerator. It's a little bit different, whereas in a gas car, the more that you when you let off the accelerator, the car continues to coast at essentially the same speed you were going. Not so with an EV. So it takes a little bit of a different driving style. You basically only use the brakes for hard or emergency stops. And if you drive that way, it increases the range while you're driving, since you are adding friction and getting more battery as you go. One of the really nice things in New Jersey is that you get free HOV lane access, regardless of how many people are in your car. Because it's electric and has no emission, that means that you are able to use the HOV lane, which is great. Basically, you keep an eye on the range the same way you would for a gas car. Efficiency is the name of the game here. So basically, anything that that takes up electricity is also draining the battery. So when you have climate control on, that's a huge battery drain compared to some of the other systems in the car. So if you don't need the heat on blast, don't put it on blast, and you get more efficiency. That's basically the way that it works. And the range on the car, it'll basically tell you how many miles you can go, but that number will obviously change in your style of driving. So it will update as you drive, which is pretty nice. And overall, they have better technology than a lot of the typical internal combustion engine cars. So, in terms of brake assist, in terms of blind spot monitoring, 360 monitoring on all the cars. Like my car is an EV, and when I go to park in a spot, it'll tell me where I'm close and where I'm not close to other vehicles on the sides. It's pretty cool. And a lot of newer cars have that now, but with an EV, it's sort of like the base trim is not really a base. It's better than your typical base trim on a ICE car. So there's less maintenance. So with fewer moving parts, most time your only scheduled maintenance is a tire rotation because you have no oil or filter changes. So you don't ever have to do any of that, which is really nice. My previous EV that I had a lease for 2 years. I literally did no maintenance on it, which is nice. The brake pad life is also longer since your regenerative braking is slowing the vehicle down. So you don't use your brake pads as often. Also, for those people who are concerned about how expensive the battery is, federal law requires EV batteries, which is the most expensive part of the car, to be warranted for at least 8 years and 100,000 miles. So more than likely, if you drive like most people do and get a car every 8 to 10 years, you're looking at never having to pay to replace the battery, even if it does go bad. There's also a lower cost of fuel. Regardless of how expensive or cheap gas is, electricity is basically always cheaper. By national average, if you drive 40 miles a day, with an EV, it would cost you about $60 for charge for the month, which is pretty nice. Although my cost from experience is much less than that. I used to commute up to Vernon every day from Hackettstown, and that was about a 60-mile round trip. And I would be charging my car every 3 days or so. And at that point, it was, I didn't really notice much of a difference in my electric bill. maybe $10 to $15 a month different than it used to be, which is pretty great. Um, and that's where having a home charger comes in, and that really is a must. Um, I'll get into that a little bit more later, but yeah, having a home charger is really important. Generative braking also allows the car to recharge while driving, which I mentioned earlier. So you're not really paying for energy as often. They're also cleaner than gas cars. So there's no exhaust or gas smell with the car. And also, it's about 70% cleaner than a gas powered vehicle in New Jersey, even counting in the emissions from the power plants generating the electricity to charge the batteries. I have a graph that I'll show you in a minute, but it's it's good to know that even though you're getting electricity that might be generated by a power plant, the power plants in New Jersey are, on the whole, cleaner than some other states. Also, a lot of models come with a frunk, which means a front trunk. So there's a small storage area under your front hood, which is pretty cool because the engine is really not that big. So it's pretty cool to be able to store some things up there. A lot of people put their charger up there. If you have a level 1 charger, which we'll get into in a minute. Um, Also, charging. There's lots to know, but it's simple. I'm going to break it down for you in a couple minutes. So this is that graph I spoke of. You can see the power generation profile for New Jersey. Basically, the carbon intensity of New Jersey's electric grid is lower than the national average. So by driving an electric car, you reduce your carbon emissions from 300 grams per mile to 97 grams per mile, which is a 68% reduction. And you can see here that the average gasoline car is 300, as they said. An electric car for the average US power is about 175. In New Jersey, it's 97, which is pretty nice. Okay, so let's get into charging. I'm sure you've all heard of the big fear, which is range anxiety. Will the car make it to the destination without running out of juice? Um, Basically, if you've never run out of gas, you're very unlikely to run out of electricity. Most cars will warn you and let you know where local chargers are through the built-in navigation system in the car. That's one thing that's really helpful. Um, and I'll talk about it a little more later, but range anxiety is not really that huge a factor. I mean, honestly, I don't know how often people are driving more than 300 miles in a turn. You know what I mean? Like, you don't typically drive that often for your commute. And if you have a home charger, it's sort of nil because you can just plug right back in when you get home, which is nice. I'm going to break down the basics of charging. So there's different levels of chargers and connectors depending on the vehicle that you have. So there's a level 1 charger, a level 2 charger, and a level 3 charger. So a level 1 charger comes with the car almost always. I have not heard of a car that doesn't come with one, but I'm going to hedge my bets here and say, car companies tend to charge you now for like everything, the nickel and dime you. So it's possible that it won't, but I don't see that happening. That charger fits a standard outlet, so a 120 volt outlet. But that means that it's going to take a long time to charge because the kilowatts are so low. Starting from 0 to 100, it could be about 24 hours, which is a long time. Which is why I said that a home charger, which is a level 2 charger, is a must. That is a 240 volt plug. So basically, what you're doing is you are buying one from a third party. There are a lot of companies that make them. My advice would be to get one that is UL listed, obviously, and something that is waterproof, weatherproof. Um, that way you don't have any issues. The cost to buy and install a charger can range between about $1,000 to $2,000, depending. But it can add value to your house going forward. And if you have solar panels, using the car is basically as green as it gets because you are charging it with the power of the sun. You would typically charge overnight on a level 2 charger. Most cars have a control that determines when to start and stop the charging, so you can schedule it. My car has a weekly schedule on it, so if, let's say, I don't work the same hours every day, I can set it to know that, okay, when I'm at home, because I'll work noon to 8 on Tuesday, set it to charge to 100% by 11:30 on Tuesday mornings, as opposed to 7 a.m. the rest of the week. Or if I work Saturdays, I can do it that way, which is pretty nice. That's really because a lot of different energy companies have higher rates for what they call what is it called? It's peak hours for electric usage. So overnight is typically non-peak, so it's a lower rate. My electric company does not change the rate depending on the time, so it doesn't really matter. But it is nice to charge it overnight and then wake up and have a full battery when you need to get driving. It'll take about 8 to 9 hours depending on your amperage for the charger. The highest amperage is typically a 40 amp charger. And there is a rebate with New Jersey State called Charge Up New Jersey, and it's $250 from the state to install electric charger at home. So you just have to make sure you go on their website, make sure that the charger that you're getting is compatible with the rebate, and you can basically get your rebate. Now, there's also what's known as a level 3 charger or a DC fast charge. That's about a full charge in 30 minutes or so, depending on how fast the kilowatts are for the charger. These are basically only available at electric charging stations. They are not a home use charger, but they are necessary if you're going on long trips. But not every EV can charge on a level 3, but most can. I know some of the lower model ones, they can't really, but it's important that you get one that can, because if you ever need to take a road trip, you're going to want to have that. I recently drove down to Virginia with my wife to visit some friends, and it was pretty easy. We stopped at one charger on the way down, about halfway outside Harrisburg, just to fill up. And we were there for maybe 20 minutes, and it was in a convenience store parking lot. So we went in, got some drinks, came back out, hung out for a few minutes, and then continued driving. So it's sort of not a huge deal. It takes a little bit longer than filling up gas, that's for sure. But as you know, in New Jersey, sometimes you have to wait for somebody to come and wait on you anyway to get gas. So, it is a different style of driving, but it's not a huge difference. In terms of public charging, right now, a lot of the public charging is free. You'll see that at malls, public buildings, parking garages, office buildings, things like that. But those are typically level 2 chargers. So, you're not getting a ton of energy while you're there, but it's nice. Like anytime you pull up somewhere, if there's a charger and it's free, plug in. Why not? You may as well get as much juice as you can for free. Most of the time, level 3 charging costs money, but it's not that much. Since electric rates vary around the country, the cost from 0 to 100 is usually between $10 and $30. So it's still cheaper than gas for the most part. Some car companies actually offer you rebates for charging. Volkswagen and Hyundai have a deal with Electrify America, which is one of the fast charging stations. And for me, I have a Volkswagen. For 3 years, I get unlimited free charging at Electrify America. So when I went down to Virginia, I stopped at Electrify America stations, and I did not have to pay anything to drive down to Virginia, which is pretty great. So a little bit more about public charging stations. As I mentioned, Electrify America. These are the fastest available public level 3 chargers. The highest kilowatt ones are 350 kilowatts per hour. To give you sort of an idea, a home level 2 charger is typically around 7.5. So you can really, charge up your vehicle fast if your vehicle can take 350. My car can take around like a little less than 200. But all the chargers vary. Sometimes, the charger may be running a little bit slower. It depends on the heat of the battery, things like that. But it's not uncommon for you to be around 90, 50 to 90, somewhere in that range. And even that is pretty much fast enough. But Electrify America, you pay by app or credit card, or as I said, if you have a plan with the car that you purchased, then you can just use that. They're usually found just off of interstates. So, for instance, as I said, outside of Harrisburg, there's one outside of Stroudsburg. There's one in, I think it's Denville, right off of 80. So they are around. If you've never seen them, then you're probably because you're not looking. Um, the next ones are the Tesla superchargers. These are the most common level 3 chargers. As of right now, they're basically only used for Teslas. Um, that's if you have a Tesla. So you would basically plug in and charge because Tesla has your payment info already on file. Um, that's it's sort of a proprietary system that Tesla has. However, Ford, GM, Rivian, and I think even now some others have signed on to use that network, the Tesla Supercharger network, in 2024. So because they're so common, other car companies now want to switch over to be able to use the Tesla system. There's also something which is called the Tesla Magic Dock, which will allow other car companies to use a Tesla charger, but there's only a couple of these right now, and they're mostly like in uh, where are they? It's like central New York area, because I think there's a Tesla uh, factory up there or something like that. But it's sort of a slow rollout on those. But that'll be really nice once they start putting Magic Docks everywhere, and then everybody can kind of use them. EVgo is another level 3 charger. Their speeds are not as high as the other two, and they take so it takes longer to charge. They're good for stopping for lunch or shopping, somewhere where you're going to be for a while, as opposed to like a Electrify America or a Tesla one where you can just plug in, grab a drink, unplug, and get going. ChargePoint is the next one. Those are the most common public level 2 chargers. So those are the ones you usually see in public places like libraries, office buildings, hotels, parks. They are mostly level 2s. There are some level 3s around, but they're mostly level 2 chargers. Blink is also like ChargePoint, but they're not as common. Same thing. They're typically found in the same places, and there's also very few level 3 chargers. The rest are Volta, Shell Recharge, EV Connect. There are a lot of them out there. Green Spot is another one that's found in public parks. Some of these you have to pay for. Volta, I know you do not, and those are found at the Rockaway Mall, the AMC Theater by the Rockaway Mall. There's some like in Westfield. Those are ones you might find in parking lots for places that you may be sitting for a while. So I mentioned earlier that there's a couple different types of chargers. So here's we'll go into it. There's different types of connectors for chargers. There's what's known as a J1772, and that is for level 1 and 2 charging. That's basically the standard in the United States for charging cars. Teslas use a different one, but they can use that if they have an adapter. There's a CHAdeMO, which is a level 3 charger, and that's only used right now with the Nissan Leaf. It's standard in Japan, but it is being phased out in North America and Europe. And once again, Tesla can use that with an adapter. There's an SAE combo CSS charger, which is the level 3 version of the 1772. So basically, it's a 1772 with a couple of extra plugs in it. And I'll show you a diagram of what these kind of look like. That way you're aware of it. Then there's the Tesla NACS chargers, which are the high power wall chargers and the superchargers. And those are level 2 and 3. Those, once again, are proprietary for Tesla, but Ford, GM, Rivian, Volvo are set to join that soon. So here's sort of a breakdown of what they look like. So you can see the top one is the J1772. And if you look 2 down to the combo CSS one, you'll see it looks like that with 2 extra plugs on it. So that's why you can use either one. The 1772 is for the 1 and 2 level, and the CCS is for level 3. The CHAdeMO is the second one there, and then there's the 2 Tesla ones that are the same for a level 2 and level 3. So what's it like finding a charging station? Most EVs include navigation that'll spot charging stations within your range, which is really nice. For instance, inside my car, my built-in navigation, if I put in a destination that's outside the current range that I have, it'll find me a charging station to stop at so that I can continue on my journey, but it'll be within my current range. And it'll actually tell me how much I have to charge to get to the next place. Most of the time I'll charge beyond that just to make sure that I get there. But it's pretty nice. And it also adjusts for elevation and things like that. So like if you're going uphill, you're going to use more battery. Going downhill, you're going to use less. Um, and because my car has a free service with Electrify America, it will automatically prefer those stations for me. But there are smartphone apps that are helpful in finding charging stations. The one I really love is called PlugShare, and that is a crowdsourced one where it'll have a map of your area and it will list all of the publicly available chargers, and all the information is by users. So it'll tell you, if there's a fee involved, if the charger's online or not, because some of them break. Um, it will tell you the charging speed, their highest speed at each one, and it'll tell you obviously the network that the charger is on. There's also the individual charging network applications. So Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, they all have their own app on your phone. And it's important to have them anyway in case you're going to stop and charge there. You typically pay through the app as opposed to a typical gas station where you hand them cash or a credit card. Maps and Apple Maps also have charging stations on them. I just find them to be a little bit clunkier to use. But once again, these are the free ones. There are other apps that are pay apps that will tell you how to find charging stations and plan your route for you. That's up to you if you wanted to pay for those. I don't really pay for apps, so that's me. So after all that, where do you get one? Where do you get an electric vehicle? Most car companies offer an electric vehicle alternative. For instance, Audi has the Q8 e-tron, BMW has the i4, Buick has the Electra, et cetera, et cetera. Ford has the Mustang Mach-E, Nissan has the Ariya. There are some companies that only make electric cars. Fisker, Lucid, Polestar, Rivian, and Tesla are solely electric. They do not make gas-powered cars at all. So some of these are more popular than others, but you'll start seeing more of them on the road. I just took some pictures here of current EV models just to show you what they look like. A lot of times they design them to look a little more futuristic than the gas-powered alternatives, just to make them stand out, maybe make them a little more interesting to people who are thinking about purchasing. So there's the Chevy Bolt and the Mustang Mach-E. There's the Ioniq 5 from Hyundai and the Kia EV6. There's the Nissan Ariya and the Volkswagen ID4. There's the Tesla Model 3 and the Rivian R1T. So how much should I expect to pay for one? EVs are more expensive than internal combustion engine cars on the sticker price. At the end of 22, the average price was $61,000, which is compared to $49,000 for all cars and trucks. But most are between $40,000 and $50,000. The price is skewed because some of the higher level ones are really expensive, but most people will not be purchasing those. Prices will come down with adoption and the manufacturing processes. As more places, more factories are able to produce them, more means less money. There are also a ton of tax breaks on these. With the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government gives you up to $7,500 off the cost of the vehicle. If you purchase the vehicle, that is off of your yearly tax filing. So you need to make sure that you get that early in the year because those will run out after a while. If you lease a vehicle, it is offered off the top of the cost of the car. So what is a $57,000 car is now a $50,000 car, which doesn't seem like much, but is actually really big. New Jersey State also gives up to $4,000 off, but those also run out quickly during the year. So if you're going to be purchasing an EV, I recommend you do it in January because you could get essentially $11,500 off the cost of the car. In addition, there is no sales tax in New Jersey if you purchase a fully electric vehicle. That is gigantic. I was looking for my first EV and I got it for about $5 more than I was leasing my previous car, which was a gas car. So, all the rebates can really help you out if you are looking to lease, especially because it comes off the total price of the car right away. Essentially, I would say you're better off leasing because of that, and because the technology will only get better every year. So the range will likely be increasing and increasing as battery technology gets better. So, after all that, what are the pros for owning an EV? They're better for the environment over the life of the vehicle, especially if the electricity is generated by green renewable sources. Um, they can get even better once the battery recycling is perfected. I realize that's a huge bugaboo for people, but cars have batteries too, regular gas cars. Um, there is a smoother drive and a sports car like handling. If you've never driven an EV, I recommend you try one out at a car dealership and just see how you like it. Um, there is no gear shifting. There is instant torque. So basically, right off the line, you are going, and there is no hesitation whatsoever. So it's pretty cool to drive one, especially getting onto the highway. It's really nice. And you get HOV lane access in New Jersey. There's also lower fuel and maintenance costs. So you basically never need to go to a station if you're not driving long distances. Um, if you drive back and forth to work every day and you hardly ever drive over 100 miles in a day, you will likely never go to a gas or, well, you basically don't have to go to a gas station, but you basically never have to go to a public charging station. You can always charge your car at home. There are also tax breaks and incentives when you acquire the car, as I mentioned. And there's a 10% Easy Pass discount on the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway for having an electric vehicle. So if you have an Easy Pass and it's registered in New Jersey, and you have an EV, you can get discounts. There's also great technology in these. The infotainment systems are great. There's voice command. There's autonomous driving, essentially. I know Tesla has probably the best software in the business for this. My car, like I said, it's a Volkswagen. I can set it up for adaptive cruise control, and I can set it up for lane assist, and basically let it drive itself. Obviously, I don't take my hands off the wheel or anything like that, but it will keep me in the lanes on the highway at whatever speed I determine and at whatever distance I determine from the car in front of me. And if I just tap the blinker, it will move into that lane when it is safe to do so. So basically, the car can drive itself, although I don't really, not 100% positive that it essentially does do it. And it can park itself too, which is pretty cool. I've yet to try that, but I've seen videos of people using it. Once again, I'm a little worried about it, but no one, as far as I've seen on the videos, has ever hit another car. So that's pretty cool too. So, what are the cons? As I mentioned, they are more expensive. So, if you don't have the money up front, it's sort of a non issue for you. Plus, you have to pay to have the charger installed at your home. Once again, the chargers are not crazy expensive, and it's worth it if you intend on just going electric because then you'll have one. But the upfront cost is a little bit higher. There is also less range than a typical internal combustion engine car. I know with the previous cars, I've gotten up to 400 miles on a tank. With this, I get maybe 300, which once again, though, is not a huge deal because I don't do that often. And I drove down to Virginia with essentially no issue. So that was my first long-term road trip in a electric vehicle. And as long as I know where the charging stations are and I plan it out ahead of time, I'm good. And I would say that pretty much everybody else would be. That being said, more public chargers are still needed at this point. The infrastructure bill is intended to put more chargers in across the country, but we still need them. They need to be more. There need to be more of them at each station. As these get more and more popular, people are going to need it because even now, sometimes when you go to some of the free stations, especially with Electrify America, because Hyundai and Volkswagen have deals with them, they are packed. And sometimes you have to wait 10 minutes to get into a spot to charge, which is annoying. And still, charging times can be long on a level 1 and 2 charger. I would basically never recommend charging on a level 1 unless you have no other option, just because it takes forever. Level 2 charger is basically the way to go, especially at home. But a level 1 charger can take a really long time. But once again, sometimes you don't have the option. Some people may not be able to install a home charger because you may have an apartment or you may rent. So that's an issue for some people. I know apartment complexes are now starting to put them in their parking areas. which is really nice, but you need more than one because if everyone in the parking garage area is going to have one, it becomes difficult. Also, few private mechanics know how to work on them. I lease my cars, so I basically will, everything is under warranty for the most part, but some people keep their cars longer than I do, so you're going to need somebody to look at them. I mean, obviously that will change as it goes forward, but as of right now, they're not that easy for people to work on. And the electric grid needs upgrading overall anyway. I mean, that's just a thing, regardless of EVs or not. Um, our electrical system in this country is pretty behind the times. So if this gets them to kick them in the butt a little bit to increase that, that's great. So I just included some cool future models and concepts that I thought were interesting. This is the Cadillac Celestiq, I don't know, but it's supposed to come out next year. The Lincoln Star is also supposed to come out next year. This is the Faraday Future FF91, which is supposed to come out this year, but I have not heard anything about it. Here's the Ioniq 7 from Hyundai, which is also expected next year. The Rolls-Royce Spectre, which is supposed to come out this year. This is the Sony Honda Afeela, which is supposed to come out in 2026, which is a joint venture between Sony and Honda, which is interesting. This one you've probably seen before. This is the Tesla Cybertruck, which is supposed to come out next year. It looks crazy. This is the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which is also supposed to come out next year. I've seen this prototype. It's really cool, but it's essentially the microbus of years past, but it's turned into an electric version. So, in conclusion, electric vehicles are not for everyone yet. The infrastructure needs improvement, but it is coming. I am hopeful that eventually they will become the norm. It seems like companies are pushing for it. I switched to electric 2.5 years ago or so, and I'll never go back. I enjoy them that much, and I think they're a lot of fun. You do have to change the way you think about driving and fueling, however. You never need to go to a fueling station unless if you drive to work and back, since you will charge at home. There are possibly more stops during longer road trips, but it's definitely cheaper to refill your vehicle. As I said, I paid $0 to drive down a couple states and back. With DC fast chargers, you basically only need to stop for about a half hour if you're at zero, or at least close to zero. But I mean, you're not really going to often be at that number. You would typically get to around 30, 20%, somewhere in that range before you would stop to charge. It's probably the way of the future. 1/3 of the new cars in the world are likely to be electric by 2030. Some countries are going that way. I know like Norway, maybe, or Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries, I believe, is basically getting rid of gas cars entirely. The far future might be with autonomous community vehicles, which is pretty interesting, where nobody technically owns a car anymore. They're more like driverless cabs that kind of just come and go, and they'll pick you up and drop you off, and you don't actually need to own a car. I don't know how much I'd like that, but it is a possibility going forward. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the program, and we'll see you next time.